Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going over the BAFTA nominations. Now you may have noticed that I didn't do a reaction video a couple days ago when the BAFTA nominations came out, and a couple reasons for that. One, obviously because the Oscar nominations already kind of had happened, and that's a lot of my reaction towards like all the precursors, is in anticipation of like the Oscar nomination. So it's like kind of felt a little undercut there. But then also B, I also just kind of saw a couple spoilers. I saw some things before the before I could do a reaction, and I didn't want to fake a reaction or do anything that was inauthentic in that regard. So just decided what I was gonna do instead was just going to go over all of the nominations at BAFTA and look at it from the lens of, if this happened before the Oscars, would that have changed like my nomination predictions? So let's just start. There's a couple extra categories at BAFTA than there is at the Oscars, so we're just going to go over the categories that are the same at both, and then at the end we'll kind of briefly talk about a couple of the others. So the first category was Best Film, and the nominees at BAFTA were Hamnet, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, Sentimental Value, and Sinners. Now, in this category, there was nothing too shocking and nothing that would have changed my opinion of, because at BAFTA obviously only 5 films get in for kind of the Best Film category, and obviously at the Oscars it's 10, so it's like pretty comfortable, and these 5 were already kind of locks anyway. The only thing, like Frankenstein was the only film that didn't get Best Film at BAFTA that was like as much of a lock as these other 5 films, so nothing would have changed there for Best Film. For Best Director, the nominees were Ryan Coogler, Yorgos Lanthimos, Josh Safdie, Paul Thomas Anderson, Joachim Trier, and Chloe Zhao. Now, had this come out before before the Oscar nominations, I probably would have been more comfortable putting Josh Safdie, because I predicted Jafar Panahi in my Oscar nominations. I think if I had known that Safdie had gotten BAFTA, I probably would have put him in over Panahi, so I would have gotten a 5 for 5 in the director category, because that was the one kind of slip up I had there. I wouldn't have bought into Yorgos Lanthimos necessarily. I maybe would have moved him up a little bit closer. But obviously BAFTA has loved Begonia, so I think that's the one thing, is I don't know for sure if I would have. It's likely though that I would have made that switch from Panahi to Safdie. And for Best Actress, nominees are Jessie Buckley, Rose Byrne, Kate Hudson, Chase Infinity, Renata Reinsve, and Emma Stone. And this is honestly one of the more interesting ones here, because this simultaneously would have confirmed, because I picked Hudson over Infinity, and I know that was kind of like a 50-50 for a lot of people. I saw it was pretty even based on whose predictions I was looking at, where that was going. So this like simultaneously would have confirmed like Kate Hudson's in there for me, but at the same time also made Infinity stronger by getting into BAFTA. So this does mean that Chase Infinity got everything except the Oscar, which happens every now and then. And there's another actor we're going to talk about in a second that also applies to. But yeah, I think I would have stuck with Hudson over Infinity, but I think what this really confirms is like this was undoubtedly the top 6, and if the Oscars had 6 nominees per category, this obviously was the 6 that we got confirmed here. But it's really fascinating that like I don't know if it really would have changed anything. It probably would have made it even harder for me to snub Infinity for Hudson had this come out before, but really just fascinating that it just confirmed that obviously what we already knew, that was the top 6. Best Actor, the nominees are Robert Aramayo for I Swear, Timothy Chalamet, Leonardo DiCaprio, Ethan Hawke, Michael B. Jordan, and Jesse Plemons. Now, this is where there is a couple, like I Swear and Pillion, I think were kind of the British films that got multiple nominations at BAFTA that obviously just weren't Oscar players for being British films, and so I wouldn't necessarily have considered that at all. And then Jesse Plemons gets in over Wagner Moura, who wasn't shortlisted. So I think again all this did was confirm that Jesse Plemons was number 6, ahead of like a Joel Edgerton. But I think we all were pretty confident that the Golden Globe drama winner was going to get an Oscar nomination, so it was pretty easy to put Wagner Moura in there over Jesse Plemons, but this did just kind of confirm that Jesse was number 6. Best Supporting Actress, Nominees were Odessa Azayan, Inga Ipsdottir Lilias, Wumi Masaku, Carey Mulligan, Teyana Taylor, and Emily Watson. Now, this is. I just said that the actress was kind of fascinating. I think maybe this is more fascinating because no Amy Madigan here, which is crazy. And I've seen a lot of people now that are just kind of like thinking that there's no chance for Madigan to win the Oscar now. And part of me agrees because BAFTA, especially, I feel like in the the actress categories, I feel like BAFTA has a pretty good grip on it. But I think Amy Madigan was still a lot of people's favorite to win the Oscar, and it was like even when you're making your nomination predictions, a lot of people it was like her and Teyana Taylor were your two locks, like they were for me. So I think had this come out before, I think there's a couple things that would have happened. One, I would have still predicted Madigan, but I would have moved her down. Like I would have had, obviously Carey Mulligan, the same thing, British actress, but I think I would have had like Inga Ipsdottir Lilias would be like my number two, in the category, and then Wunmi Masaku would be like my number three, and then maybe that's where you're sneaking in an Amy Madigan at the 4 or 5 spot. But what's really interesting here is Odessa Azayan getting in. I already predicted her at the Oscar. Had she gotten, would have been the actor nomination and the BAFTA nomination. Like, there's no world I would not have just with full confidence. So I might have had like Odessa Azayan as like my number 3 or number 4, like right there with Wumi Masaku, and Amy Madigan might have been my 5. Like she's the one that sneaks in at the Oscar. So this is, I mean, crazy for Odessa to get in here. Like, and this would have completely like I already had Elle Fanning. I think I had her like, because let's see. So I had Ariana Grande was like my number 6, and then Gwyneth Paltrow I think was my number 7. So like Elle Fanning was like my number 8 going into Oscar nomination morning, like 8, who I felt most confident in getting nominated. This would have bumped her maybe to like 9 or 10. Like I would have like been completely out on Elle Fanning. So her getting in over Odessa was pretty crazy, especially seeing Odessa getting that combination of SAG Actor Award and then BAFTA, both of those nominations. It would have made it impossible for me to not predict her going into Oscars, which because I already did anyway. So this is honestly probably the most fascinating category, but I feel like there's maybe another category too. I might bring that up later. For supporting actor, the nominees are Paul Mescal, Peter Mullen from I Swear, Sean Penn, Stellan Skarsgård, Benicio del Toro, and Jacob Elordi. And this is really interesting because I think that this category would have cemented the top 5 that we all were already running with, because Paul Mescal now joins Chase Infinity as having every single precursor except, and then just not getting the Oscar. So I think this would have cemented the top 5, and it would have been like the same thing with I just did with Elle Fanning. I think I would have moved Delroy Lindo even down more, like not being able to get in here at BAFTA. Like there's just no world I would have considered Delroy Lindo for an Oscar nomination. Had we already gotten this beforehand, like I would have again just cemented that 5 that we all had like essentially already kind of like we're going with. Like it would have just been even more of a done deal. So really kind of a interesting thing. I mean, I think we all knew that Paul Mescal was going to get nominated at BAFTA. I know a lot of people think he's got a great chance at winning, which honestly I think I might be rooting for because I like the chaos of award season. So it'd be really cool for him to win BAFTA and then just not show up Oscar night. So interesting here that kind of a little bit of that curveball again with Delroy Lindo getting no precursor and then just showing up at the Oscars. Original screenplay nominees were I Swear, Marty Supreme, The Secret Agent, Sentimental Value, and Sinners. And this, what would have happened had this happened first? I would have put The Secret Agent in over Sorry Baby. Probably. I had Sorry Baby as my number 5. And I was frankly between Sorry Baby and Blue Moon. Like those were my two. The films that I was debating between. I wasn't even really considering The Secret Agent. Had I known The Secret Agent was going to get, had gotten BAFTA, I think I would have locked it in at probably that 5 slot. And there's a chance I would have moved it up to 4 because I really wanted to predict Sorry Baby. Like, I really thought that was going to happen. So I might have predicted, had this happened first, I would have moved Secret Agent to 4 and then still put Sorry Baby in over It Was Just an Accident, probably. And that might have caused an additional snowball effect of maybe where I would have started snubbing. Because I gave It Was Just an Accident, predicted it for I guess two more, because it's picture and director were the other two that I was giving it that it didn't get. So I mean, maybe had that happened, it would have it would have hurt because I wouldn't have gotten the Secret Agent. But I guess it would have been a twofold because I wouldn't have got Secret Agent, or I wouldn't have gotten It Was Just an Accident or Blue Moon. I would have picked two other things. So kind of an interesting thing there. I don't know exactly how it would have turned out, but I'm sure I would have put the Secret Agent in. Adapted screenplay. We got The Ballad of Wallace Island, Begonia, Hamnet, One Battle After Another, and Pillion. And this is like I was just saying a little bit ago. I wouldn't have been swayed by this. I wouldn't have been moved. Pillion, I swear, and then I guess The Ballad of Wallace Island has a couple nominations here as well. I wouldn't have been moved by any of those. So I would have still gone with what we got, with those top three plus the other two Best Picture nominees that just weren't here. I don't think I would have necessarily been pulled in any other way based on these. A film not in the English language. Nominees were It Was Just an Accident, The Secret Agent, Sentimental Value, Surat, and The Voice of Hind Rajab. And at this point, I had already, because this was the five that A, got the Oscar nomination, and B, it was the five that I predicted in my predictions video, because I was already moving away from No Other Choice. And I think that had No Other Choice got nominated here, I don't think that would have moved me at all. I think I was still pretty confident in just kind of predicting that snub, because I feel like there's usually one snub every year in international film at the Oscars, and so this would have just cemented, because in my predictions video I was toying with, The Voice of Hind Rajab, or Left Hand Girl, or The President's Cake. There was like a couple I can't remember off the top of my head. There was like 5 or 6 that I was like, oh, it could be any of these, and I didn't feel great about any of them, and I ended up going with The Voice of Hind Rajab because that felt like that made the most sense. This would have just made that decision a whole lot easier. This would have cemented that The Voice of Hind Rajab was my number 5 over No Other Choice. It just, again, I just wouldn't have spent as much time or energy contemplating any of the other films. An animated film. Nominees were Elio, Little Amelie, and Zootropolis 2. Now this is interesting at BAFTA because they, for some reason, I think they rotate between like 3 and 4. Maybe it's kind of like how Best Picture used to be at the Oscars years ago, when it was like it could be anywhere from 8 to 10 nominees before they went to a fixed 10. And so I wonder if that's what it is, because I feel like there's been 4 in the past, but it's always less than 5, which is weird. So it would have been hard to make any conclusions necessarily based on this, except for the fact that Elio is the one that got in here, because I was contemplating picking something over Elio at the Oscars, so this would have cemented Elio in as my number 5, and then obviously Little Amelie, Zootopia 2, and then K-Pop Demon Hunters wasn't eligible here, and we all knew that was going to get nominated. So all this really would have done for me is because I had Arco firmly in there, so this would have just cemented Elio as the film that I was kind of teetering on, just would have cemented it in there. Documentary nominees were 2,000 Meters to Andrivka, Apocalypse in the Tropics, Cover Up, Mr. Nobody vs. Putin, and The Perfect Neighbor. This was basically, when I'm looking at these 5, this is like basically almost what I predicted anyway for the Oscars, which was completely wrong. So all this would have done is just confirmed my wrong prediction, my wrong assumption of the category. So I wouldn't have changed anything really. I would have predicted pretty close to this and still got the 2 out of 5 or whatever I ended up getting at the actual Oscars. So this is interesting that this was closer to what I was thinking for the Oscar. Best casting nominees are I Swear, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, Sentimental Value, and Sinners. In my predictions video, I predicted Sentimental Value for casting at the Oscars, and then the morning of the nominations in my video, I started off the video by talking about a couple of the switches I was making, and that was one of them. Was I switched off of Sentimental Value when I went to Weapons. I think had this happened first, I would have stuck with Sentimental Value for sure. I would have then just swapped out I Swear for Hamnet, right? Hamnet didn't get casting at BAFTA? That seems kind of crazy. I'm like wondering if I typed this up wrong, because that seems wrong. But yeah, I think this would have again kind of cemented me in to Sentimental Value, and I wouldn't have made that switch, which ultimately didn't matter anyway, because it was The Secret Agent that ended up getting in at the Oscars. So no loss there. Editing nominees are F1, A House of Dynamite, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, and Sinners. This is one where this wouldn't have affected much for me anyway, because The House of Dynamite is the one that I wasn't going to predict for the Oscar, and you know, I was pretty comfortable with everything else, and in that fifth slot was the one that was kind of up in the air between multiple films, whether it was going to be Frankenstein or whether it was going to be Hamnet, whether it was going to be all of these other just different kind of Best Picture films. So I don't think this would have changed my opinion much. I would have still predicted what I predicted. Cinematography nominees are Frankenstein, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, Sinners, and Train Dreams. And so I think this would have just cemented the 5 for me. Again, this is what I predicted. This was the 5 that got in at the Oscars. I think this was the same 5 at ASC, right? So you had ASC, BAFTA, and Oscars all with the same 5 films. So not much would have changed there. It just would have cemented my predictions, made it even easier of a category for me. Production design nominees are Frankenstein, Hamnet, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, and Sinners. Now, had this come out before the Oscars, I think this would have helped me, because I actually ended up predicting Wicked for Good in this category. This was one of, obviously, the many misses. I just wasn't necessarily feeling One Battle After Another as a production design contender. But had I known it got BAFTA, I would have been more comfortable kind of predicting it, because I was really between Wicked for Good and Fantastic Four were the two that I was debating between. So this is one of those categories where it would have actually helped to have this before the Oscars. It wouldn't have been a red herring at all. This would have actually been a pretty big help for me, because would I have made that switch? I think so. I think I would have made the switch, because I was kind of looking for the opportunity to snub Wicked in a couple spots, because I knew I was predicting it for too much. I think I had it for like 5 Oscar nominations. I wouldn't have gone all the way to 0, but I was looking for a category here or there where I felt like it would have been weak, and so I think I maybe would have made that switch, would have gone One Battle instead of Wicked. Costume design nominees are Frankenstein, Hamnet, Marty Supreme, Sinners, and Wicked for Good. This is one where I just talked about last one. I was looking for like an excuse to boot Wicked. This is one where this would have confirmed Wicked was locked in for costume design, which I think I already had it as a lock in my predictions anyway. And so this wouldn't have made much of a difference, because Wicked was out, Marty Supreme was in, and Marty Supreme got in here, but I still probably would have predicted like Hedda over it. So I don't think this really would have changed much for me at the Oscars. Makeup and hair nominees are Frankenstein, Hamnet, Marty Supreme, Sinners, and Wicked for Good. This is the same thing. This would have confirmed Wicked for me. In looking at this is just kind of like crazy how different this is from the Oscars, because you got Wicked in here, Hamnet, which that didn't get in at the Oscars, right? Actually, let me see the costume design or makeup. So it's Frankenstein. I still need to learn how to pronounce this. Kakou, Sinners, Smashing Machine, Ugly Stepsister. So like there is multiple things going on here. Pretty much Sinners and Frankenstein, right? Those are the only two that correlated. So you got 3 differences. So this would have locked me into Wicked. I was already locked into the Smashing Machine at the Oscar. So this would have made it harder to predict those other two, the Ugly Stepsister or Kakou, which I wasn't predicting either of those anyway. So this really is one of those where this would have like almost tricked me into like going way more conventional, and the Oscars, this category was already a big shock Oscar nomination morning. It would have been even crazier had we gotten this first. Special visual effects nominees are Avatar: Fire and Ash, F1, Frankenstein, How to Train Your Dragon, and The Lost Bus. Now the interesting thing that would be kind of up for debate is I had Superman as a lock at the Oscar. Had this come out first, like had I known that Superman didn't get BAFTA, it's interesting. I don't know if I definitely wouldn't have had it at a lock for an Oscar nomination, but I probably still would have predicted it. Because you were going to remove How to Train Your Dragon. I wasn't going to predict Jurassic World unless it got in here, which I don't know if it was shortlisted here. So it's one of those where it's like I don't think this would have changed much, except it would have opened me up to the possibility of Superman potentially getting snubbed at the Oscars, because I did not see that coming. Sound nominees are F1, Frankenstein, One Battle After Another, Sinners, and Warfare. And this is one that I don't know what I would have actually predicted, but I do know that this, had this come out first, it would have made me second guess Seurat. I would have been questioning it and would have been a little bit more nervous to predict it. It was already my number 5 when I did my predictions anyway, where I kind of threw it in there. Had I gotten this first, I don't think Warfare was on the short list at the Oscars. But I maybe would have just been a little bit more nervous about Seurat and maybe found something else instead. So this is one where it's probably good the Oscar nominations came out first, because I was just not confident in Seurat, but a little bit more confident than I would have been. Original score nominees are Begonia, Frankenstein, Hamnet, One Battle After Another, and Sinners. Now, this is in that video, my reaction video I talked about at the beginning. I was making some changes. One of the changes I made was I went from Marty Supreme to Begonia, which kind of felt a little risky but it was just something I kind of had a gut feeling about, which ended up being right. This was the one kind of early morning pivot I made that was beneficial, that actually helped me. Had this come out first, I wouldn't have even made a pivot. Like, this just would have been my prediction. I would have had Begonia in over Marty Supreme days before Oscar nominations, instead of the morning of, just making a gut feeling switch. So this would have been nice to have before, because it would have confirmed it, but honestly I think it was more fun not having that information, because it made me feel better about that gut feeling of going with Begonia in this category. And again, there are several other categories at the BAFTAs than there are at the Oscars. So just going to quickly, not going to go over all the nominees, but just I'll flash up the graphic of what was nominated in each of the following categories: British Short Animation, British Short Film, Children's and Family Film, EE Rising Star, Outstanding British Contribution to Cinema, Outstanding British Film, and Outstanding Debut by a British Writer, Director, or Producer. So all in all, I think it would have been fun to have actually got up that morning and done an actual reaction to the video, but it's also kind of fun in hindsight doing the video this way, because I don't think I would have had this now, on the fly. I don't think I would have made all these connections. I think it was more fun to kind of, instead of just looking at it as a shocking reacting to the nominees, it was more fun kind of looking at it from a kind of a step back and being like, oh, what if we looked at it from how this would have changed my predictions. So all in all, I think it would have changed a couple of my predictions. Some of the categories would have helped. Some of them would have led me more astray. So it's interesting to at least since I've been following the Oscars since the 2019 film, so 2020. This is the first time the Oscar nominations have been before BAFTA. And it was a fun experience, but I will say that going forward, I would like BAFTA nominations to be before, because it makes me more interested in all the precursors when they're all leading up to the Oscars. So I think the BAFTA ceremony, I think, is still before the Oscars, so we will have that information before the Oscars. But it was just kind of fun taking a look at it from this angle, from that perspective. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought of these BAFTA nominations. What categories would you have maybe predicted a little bit differently at the Oscars had you known this information? And if you'd like to like the video and then subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes in my awards content series, or just any of the other series that I have going on my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a great day.